I'll call the June meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order, and if you'll join me with the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have our roll call, please.
Kimball? Present. Latham?
Here.
Carey? Here. Davis? Here. Ostermeyer?
Here.
Hampy? Here. Borders?
Here.
Let the record show that all commissioners are present.
Okay. Do we have any amendments to the agenda?
No, sir, we do not.
Ceremonies, appointments, announcements, presentations, nothing there. Okay, for those of you that are in attendance in the audience, we're going to have two public hearings this evening, so if you plan on commenting in either one of those hearings, we need you to fill out a comment sheet that's located on the podium in the back and turn those into Kelly up here at the front table, if you would, prior to the hearing. Okay. Any conflicts this evening, commissioners?
No.
Okay. Consent calendar.
I guess it's me. I would move to approve the consent calendar from, actually, are we doing the meeting minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. From May 13th, 2014, as presented.
Second. Okay. Motion and a second. Roll call.
Kimball?
Yes.
Ostermeyer?
Yes.
Carey? Yes. Davis? Hampy?
Yes.
Latham?
Yes.
Borders?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the citizens' issues. If anyone's out here that has anything to address the council with this evening that's not on the hearings, we'd be happy to hear from you. Nothing. Okay. Unfinished old business. Anyone have any? Hearing none, we'll move on then to public hearings. So our first hearing is going to be Garrett, Adams, and Kasun Annexation, A1403. John's going to present, so I'm open the public hearing.
Good evening, Commissioners. John Manley, Associate Planner here at the City of Post Falls, introducing the Garrett, Adams, and Kasun Annexation, case file A-14-03. The applicants are Randy and Ruth Wells, George Adams, and Robert Kasun. The requested action is for the Planning and Zoning Commission to review the annexation request and determine that the requested SC4 zoning conforms to the Post Falls Comprehensive Plan and the Smart Code zoning ordinance, and make recommendation of approval to City Council along with appropriate conditions. The project location, as you see on the map with the asterisk, is just south of 16th Avenue, east of Idaho, and about a quarter mile to a half mile north of Mullen Avenue. If you look at the existing zoning in the area, you have what you see in yellow there is the R1 single-family home type zoning, and highlighted blue is the subject properties requesting the annexation with commercial and limited commercial just to the southwest along Idaho Street. But what is SC4 zoning for what they're requesting? SC4 zoning is a form-based code from Smart Code that permits a mix of houses, townhomes, and small apartments, buildings, and scattered commercial activity. Some of the uses for residential that are permitted, as you see here, vary depending on the zoning districts, but you can see as in the SC4 zone, it permits all housing types. SC4 also permits some lodging, office, and retail uses as well. You see in red, those are the highlighted uses. It permits the inn, a bed and breakfast, an office building, as well as live-work units. For retail, a deli, a retail building, display gallery, a restaurant, and a coffee shop. The picture to the left is a picture I found that kind of explained the purpose of Smart Code. And Smart Code is, like I said, a form-based code that transitions from kind of the rural ag areas to more of your urban areas that you'd see maybe in downtown Coeur d'Alene or city of Spokane. Highlighted in red would be the area that kind of would reflect the area requesting the annexation along Idaho Street as you go north of Prairie Avenue, which maybe would be more of your ag area, transitioning more closer to your core, your center, closer to I-90. The project size is approximately 15 acres, 5 lots. The comprehensive plan designation is residential, and G4 infill within the Smart Code future land use map. The current land use is residential, with predominantly most of the acreage being vacant. The water provider would be the city of Post Falls, as well as the sewer provider. So this time, this concludes staff's introduction of the project, and the applicants are present this evening.
Okay. So could we have the applicants come forward? State your name and address for the record, please.
Randy Wells, 428 Cider Road, Athol, Idaho.
Okay. Thank you.
This is just brought forth. It's been, actually, we were approached by the city so you could have an easement to go through the property to correct 15th Street on with 16th Street. And at that time, they asked if we were interested in an annexation of the property. And so we went forth and met with also the neighbor, Mr. George Adams, and then the neighbor to George to the east is Bob Kasun, and he also wanted to be annexed into the city at the same time. So we brought it forward. We've been reviewing with the city over quite a period of time, actually, to put all of this together for the street and everything. And then we talked about the different codes and they are different possibilities, and the SC4 was probably in not only our best interest but in the city's best interest too. So we ask at this time that the planning and zoning look at this and for annexation into the city of Post Falls.
Okay.
And I'm here for questions if you have any.
I was just going to say, any questions from the commission for the applicant?
And I'm also representing George and Bob in this.
Okay.
Okay, and just to clarify, the application requests R1, or your application narrative, and I just want to clarify that you are requesting SC4? Is that
Yeah, let me
correct?
explain that. It was SC4 to begin with, and then we sent the work back to Welsh Comer, and it came back in the next narrative, R1. And so then when Bob was coming in with it also, we had to get, and we corrected it, and then, actually, John caught it. We corrected it, and then we sent back for another narrative, and Welsh Comer put it back as R1 again, and I missed it, and John caught it, but that's why we're addressing it tonight. It should be SC4 on the entire project.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wells.
Thank you.
John, could we have the staff report?
So in the Planning Division's review, we found that the project is within the Post Falls area of city impact. And for those that don't know what the Post Falls area of city impact is, it's an area that's agreed upon through multi-jurisdictional agreements as being areas that is to be eventually incorporated within the city of Post Falls. The boundary of the proposed annexation is contiguous with the city limits. As you see here, it's contiguous to the northwest and a portion of the southern boundary line of the annexation request. The requested SC4 zoning designation may provide some flexibility. When you look at the current environment, being single-family homes, Idaho Street being fairly busy with some commercial activity, that the variable uses that was presented within the introduction could allow this to transition from single-family homes to some of the higher intense uses and to the east. The proposed SC4 zone is also compatible with the adjoining road classifications of Idaho Street and 16th. Idaho Street would be a minor arterial, with 16th being a major collector. Typically with smart code annexations, there's an accompanying neighborhood plan, otherwise known as a subdivision plan. With this one, what they're asking for is SC4, like a reserve zone. It's no different than us taking in an annexation, and an R1 annexation or an R2 annexation. Some projects that we've approved with the neighborhood plan would be the crossings. That's on Syringa, Crown Point, which is northwest of Spokane and Prairie, and in Mike Acres we just recently approved. One of the reasons why I believe that a lot of times we have neighborhood plans that accompany annexation requests that are smart code is we do them all at once. We process the subdivision plan with the annexation, and it's being driven by someone who knows what the end result is. And so they're interested in getting to a final plat more expeditiously. In this case, the applicants want to reserve that for who is intending to develop in the future. Also, the variety of permitted uses within the SC4 zoning designation are consistent with the goals and policies in the comprehensive plan. For engineering, they've commented that the proposed project would not have adverse impacts on the city's transportation system, and that both Idaho Street and 16th Street are constructed to meet current roadway standards. For the water reclamation facility, the city has available facilities and capacities to serve the proposed annexation. The Post Falls Police have commented, and they don't have any objections with the proposed annexation. And so with this, you guys can approve the as presented and as requested. You can approve with conditions or modifications, or recommend denial of the requested annexation. As staff, we do want to condition this, if it's recommended for approval, that at the time either a permit is pulled or a subdivision application, that we would complete the neighborhood plan prior to approving such permits.
John,
At this time, I'd stand for any questions.
with regards to that condition, there are 3 different property owners here. Would that condition that you're talking about, would that neighborhood plan be required from all 3 with the first permit, or would it be for the first permit on each property, they do their own neighborhood
It's
plan?
staff's intent for the first permit, because once you pull a permit, you're setting the tone for the whole 15 acres, and it'd be the intention to make sure that the transportation layout and proposed transition of the land uses in the area would fit for everybody involved in the annexation request.
Okay.
Any other questions for John at this point? Okay, thank you, John. All right, then we'll take testimony. Kelly, do we have any people who wish to speak?
We do not.
Okay, no one wishes to speak, so we don't have any rebuttal then. Any questions for staff before I close the public hearing?
I have a question for the applicant
Okay.
with regards to the staff's report. Would you mind coming up, sir?
John.
For the applicant.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Wells, I just want to make sure that you and the other applicants are okay with the recommended condition of approval, that with the first building permit, that all 3 properties must produce a neighborhood plan together.
I can't say that I'm in The property that will probably be done first is the property we're in charge of. So to have Mr. Adams have to do it at that time also, and Bob at that time, I can't quite see the reasoning for it. So personally, I think it could be done as the property sells or whoever buys or whatever. But to have a whole plan in place for one property, for all three properties for one time, I'm not sure. Maybe I need more explanation, but I can't quite see the reasoning for that, so thanks for bringing it up.
Okay.
I think it should be done separately, but maybe there's a reason for it, and I'm open to listen.
Well, I tend to agree with you that I think it probably, small pieces are really hard to plan, and it'd be ideal on it for all of them to come in together and to be planned together. But I understand how difficult that can be from your side and getting everybody on the same page. So I guess to that end, I would think that maybe you just work with staff to make sure that the neighborhood plan, that when we come back, and we're going to have to see a neighborhood plan anyway.
Right.
So that when the neighborhood plan comes back, it does allow for development of the neighboring properties in a similar way.
Although, John, is the DRC would be able to do the neighborhood plan in conjunction with the applicants without it coming to Planning and Zoning Commission?
It's possible someone could pull just a permit without a neighborhood plan, and then we would process that permit as a permitted use with the SC4 underlying zoning designation. Pulling a building permit doesn't trigger a neighborhood plan. It's just they have permitted rights with their underlying zone. So,
But how we have the condition written currently, they would have to work together to prepare one infill plan.
but the details of that would be subject to coordinating with the DRC to the level of what's appropriate at that time. If for some reason it was a single use and we didn't know the future, it may be of interest to the DRC and the applicant to have more of a generalized neighborhood plan that could flex in the future. So it may,
True.
so that's part of SMART code is it's a flexible zoning and it's a flexible code. So if by chance there was 4 different users that wanted to pull permits, then it may be appropriate to then do a more detailed neighborhood plan going forward. If you looked at the neighborhood plan as part of the Crown Point, they have a whole SC4 block. So none of that, the interior roads of that are even discussed at this point in time because nobody knows what's going to go on that project currently.
The reason I bring it up is I'd hate to see a current owner or a future owner hold another one hostage on a building permit.
Yeah, you can go.
Thanks. Probably the most critical thing that we would be looking at with the first neighborhood plans, if Randy and their property came in, would be the roadway connections and those networks adjacent to the other properties. And our interest would be such that if once an adjacent property came in and they produced a neighborhood plan, that we wouldn't have a roadway network that wouldn't function for there, or that we don't end up with, 4 or 5 just straight cul-de-sacs off there. We end up with a logical roadway network that we don't preclude George and Maryland from coming in and doing a plan, or the Kasuns from coming in and doing a plan that would hurt them later because of maybe where the roadway connection would be. And that's probably the most important item that we look at. And we do that with regular infill subdivisions anyway, so that we can put 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 projects together, and once they're done, they look like they were master planned by taking into consideration where those roads lay out. And so that's I think an approach that allows some flexibility with the adjoining properties not being tied to this being joined to one plan for all of them up front. It's just that we as a DRC and as a team would say,
So can we do
That's
that at
just
the
not
DRC
ordinance.
level and not necessarily as a condition of annexation?
yes,
That's what you're saying?
that's, I think so.
But we wanted to add some condition to the annexation agreement that would clarify that this didn't have a smart code infill neighborhood plan approved and that was a required step prior to further subdivision and development. So we could modify the condition to say that the applicant shall work with the DRC and adjacent neighbors to develop a smart code, infill neighborhood plan, and thoroughfare connections, or something like that. So we could work out those details.
I think I would probably leave it in the hands of the DRC to say
Yeah, so just
yes
coordinate
or
with
no,
DRC.
if
Yeah.
this works or it doesn't. You guys are very experienced. You know what a neighborhood plan should look like, and you know, connections and utility connections, street connections, and doing all that. So I feel very comfortable leaving it in the hands of the DRC.
Okay. Any other questions for staff or the applicant while they're there? Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to close the public hearing and open it up for discussion. Start down there.
I think it's a good plan. I mean, I think it'll come together, and I think that's what the intent is to bring this into the city, knowing that it's basic direction, but defining that when permits are pulled, so.
Okay. Mark?
Yeah, it's good. I have no comments about that, except for I originally thought the SC3 might have been a little more appropriate next to the R1, but it's becoming something like an arterial, I think, and there is commercial to the south. And so I think it's a good fit. The SC4 a little bit higher density, and it's good for the city, and good to keep that east-west transportation running smoothly through there. So I'm for it.
Okay. Brett?
Makes sense, follows the outline, so I'd support it.
Okay. Let's go down to Vicki.
No additional comments. It makes sense to me.
I'm in favor of pretty much any residential use in this area. I think it's great. I think anything from single family to multifamily would be great. Even some mixed commercial in there is really good. So I'm in favor of it.
Okay.
I would agree. I'm in favor of it as well. As Mr. Wells said, the city and them have been working a long time trying to put the right plan together, and it looks like this is the right plan, so that's good.
Okay. I like the infill for the city. I think it fits really good in this area for the SC4 zoning. I think it gives good flexibility to development on that corner, which really plays in well with what's already there. So I would support it as well. So does anyone have a motion?
I will move to recommend approval of the annexation for, let's see here, case number A14-03, the Garrett Adams Kasun annexation, adopting the findings and conclusions in the staff report, and also adopting the proposed conditions of approval with the modification of condition number 1. Make sure I'm on the right one here.
Yep.
To read, a smart code infill neighborhood plan will be required to be developed for this area.
If that's the motion, I'll second it.
It is.
Second.
We have a motion and-
Clarification, are you asking to remove the prior to issuance of any permits or subdivision of land?
Correct.
Okay. And the zoning of SC4 as proposed?
Yes,
Okay.
with the SC4 zoning.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Kelly, can we have a roll call?
Kimball.
Yes.
Ostermeyer.
Yes.
Carey.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Campy.
Yes.
Latham.
Yes.
Borders.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. All right, the next public hearing we have is the IAAR Annexation A-14-04. I'm going to open that public hearing, and John, if you could introduce, please.
The applicant is IAAR LLC, and the commission is being requested to review the annexation request and determine that the R1 zoning conforms to the Post Falls Comprehensive Plan and recommend approval to City Council along with the appropriate conditions. The approximate location, as you see here in the asterisk, is south of Maplewood Avenue, about a third of a mile west of Sealy Street, and just north of Spokane River. The project size is approximately 10 acres, and the comp plan designation is residential. Current land use is vacant, but is currently zoned ag suburban in Kootenai County. The surrounding zoning is land use, with the water provided by the City of Post Falls and the sewer provided by City of Post Falls as well. I'm looking at the surrounding zoning in yellow. That's your R1 zone. To the north is actual subdivisions that's going in with single-family homes with vacant R1 land to the west. At this time, this would conclude staff's introduction of the project.
Okay. We'll have the applicant come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering, 3909 North Schreiber Way, City of Coeur d'Alene. I'm here representing IAAR Idaho LLC tonight and their request for annexation of approximately 10 acres, as John had said, of property located on the Spokane River. For your reference, and I know it's hard to see the text, this is Maplewood right here. This would be Riverside Harbor. This is Everwood Estates, Timber River subdivisions, both zoned R1. This is the 10-acre property we're requesting for annexation. This is more or less the same map that John had thrown up. The yellow property is currently zoned R1. We're requesting an R1 zoning designation as well. As John had alluded to in the staff report, and I'm sure he's going to talk a little bit about it in his presentation, Title 18 of the city code requires anything greater than 10 acres to be annexed as smart code, as you guys were discussing in the previous annexation. This property is 10.01 acres. It's a couple hundred square feet over that threshold of 10 acres. However, approximately 2 acres of the property, is underwater, is in the Spokane River, is not usable. We can't do anything with it. It's below the ordinary high water mark, leaving us a net around 8 acres. Hence why we're requesting the R1 zoning designation and not going with the smart code. And being as we are surrounded by R1 on the west and R1 projects to the north, it seems to fit with the R1 zoning designation. With that, I think everything's been covered in the staff report, so I don't have any additional testimony unless anybody has any questions.
Questions for the applicant?
No.
At this point? Okay, thank you, sir. John, we'll have the staff report.
So the Planning Division, in their review, found that the property is within the Post Falls Area City Impact. The boundary of the proposed annexation is contiguous with the city limits to the west and to the north at those locations. The single-family residential zoning designation is appropriate for that area, and that the requested zoning would be consistent with adjacent properties. The proposed annexation is more specifically, as mentioned just previously, at 10.01 acres. And this is the excerpt from the code that allows the city council to determine properties of less than 10 acres, whether it's conventional or to be zoned smart code. And as Drew I mentioned 2.2 acres would be considered non-buildable. And per Title 18A, the proposed annexation would normally be zone smart code, either an SC2 or an SC3 zone, more than likely. Did want to go into a little bit of the difference between SC2 and SC3, just because we don't get a lot of annexations, and it gives us a bit of an opportunity to kind of review the differences between smart code and conventional zoning. With the SC2 zone and how it's comparable to the R1S, that is 1 unit per 5 acres versus the R1S has a maximum of 1 unit an acre. So they're kind of they're both rural of nature. In the SC3 zone, it's mostly comparable because the SC3 has a minimum of 3 units per acre, whereas the R1 has a maximum of 5 units per acre. So they're both zones that would be going towards your single-family home subdivision type zoning district areas. As you've seen in the staff report, there was some discussion on whether or not it should be recommended as R1 or with a smart code zone, and what zoning district to potentially recommend if it was to go smart code, and that'd be one of either the SC2 or the SC3. What you see italicized is very similar to the condition as was with the previous public hearing, and that is if there was a recommendation to do a smart code area, a mass area, is to acknowledge that upon issuance of a permit that may be the time to develop a neighborhood plan, such that if the permit was just to say at a location that you needed a road, that it wouldn't be encumbering the potential long-term layout of the transportation system or other utilities that may be needed in that area. The planning staff did want to acknowledge, though, that the R1 single-family residential zone is the most compatible zoning district, though, for that area in consideration of what the adjacent zones are and what has been built out there. Engineering Division has commented and that the proposed annexation and requested land use classifications would not adversely impact the city's transportation system, and additional rights-of-way along Maple Avenue would not be required. For the water reclamation facility, the city has available facilities and capacity to provide service to the proposed annexation. As far as domestic water, that it's located adjacent to the properties along Maplewood Avenue, and that the city has the facilities and capacity to provide service of the proposed annexation. Post Falls Police Department have commented and have no objection of the proposed annexation. So above here are the motion options going forward regarding this public hearing. Do you have any further questions for me?
Questions for John at this time?
No.
I hear none, I see none. Okay, thank you, John. Public testimony. Kelly, do we have anyone signed up to speak?
We do not.
Okay, then I guess that takes care of that. So we don't have a rebuttal. Any further questions for staff before I close the public hearing? I hear none, so I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to open it up for discussion. Start down there with Vicki.
I have no questions.
Okay.
I think R1 makes sense, especially out in that direction, and along the riverfront. So I like R1. I think it's appropriate, and they make a great argument with the underwater land.
Brian?
No, I completely agree. It's hard to argue 2.2 acres underwater.
Okay. Vicki, or Nancy?
I agree.
Okay. Mark?
Yep, no questions.
Fred?
R1.
Okay, sounds like everybody's pretty unanimous that it's a good thing to do, so I'd look for a motion.
I would move to approve annexation A-14-04 IAAR with the R1 zoning designation as presented by staff, and move that it goes on to City Council for approval.
Second.
I second.
Okay, we have a second. Roll call.
Kimball,
Yes?
Latham,
Yes.
Ostermeyer,
Yes.
Hampi,
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Carried.
Yes.
Borders.
Yes,
Motion carried.
thank you. Any new business coming
Nope.
before council? Hear or see none. Staff comments?
Just wanted to let you know, I already mentioned it before the meeting started, but the Chamber is having their Public Policy Committee meeting. There's one on June 26th, and they've asked Planning Division to present at one meeting and to have Engineering and Planning present at another meeting. They'd asked us to present on available land in the city that's zoned commercial and industrial, that has services, and then land that doesn't have services, and then also talk about the challenges with infill development. And then they've also asked us to talk about the Highway 41 corridor and the plan for that area and our work with KMPO. So I will send you details as soon as I have the specifics on the time and location. But the first meeting that they've invited us to is June 26th, and then there will be one, I believe they want us to speak at the October 23rd meeting. And then staff is working with administration on scheduling a joint workshop with the city council, and we'll be inviting Planning and Zoning Commission to talk about city development standards. And we believe that will be in July or August. So again, I'll let you know when I have specifics.
Okay, thank you very much. Commission comments. Any comments from the commissioners this evening?
Are we working on getting something together for some classes or some training workshops on the smart code? As a new commissioner,
We have not worked on that. We had that one initial workshop, and then we had the joint workshop with the city council, but that's something that, because we stopped working on amendments to smart code, but we'll talk to administration about that as well and see if we can get some workshops to talk about the codes, the zoning code, and then the smart code zoning. I think that would be helpful, especially since you're getting a lot of projects coming before you that are either smart code requests or conventional.
I like the way John does a little bit of education when he's going through the process with you. I think that's helpful. And in a way, you're getting a little bit of training with your presentations. So.
Absolutely.
And Will and I will also work on trying to figure out some schedules for the commissioner training that we had talked about at the last commission meeting.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments from the commissioners? All right, hearing none. I'd look for a
Move to
motion.
adjourn.
We're adjourned.